If you make a pathway, then of course the answer is yes.
You guys should back each other.
Which is gonna be a
Yes.
Yeah, that's 13.
Yes, and that's the one thing we're looking at right now is the real lever of the college. How do we sandbox the students? Because that is exactly our plan, that we will be hacking and going outside of the plan. But we're in baby stage. We're in baby stage. Right now.
Yeah.
We're making the cluster happen. Sorry.
We're in crime wars, while we're in our mistakes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's my good side.
Yeah.
Let's take it fair. Sure. No, that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, sorry. That 11 o'clock.
We're gonna get started. Good morning and welcome. My name is Jen D'Andrea. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations with the Orange Foundation. In just a few minutes, you're going to hear from our panelists, who are all alumni of SUNY Orange and who have gone through the computer science and technology department. They have all walked the same hallways that you do, sat in front of the same professors, in the same classrooms that you have. They have all eliminated the same questions you have on how to navigate college life, balance coursework, and what to do after your associate's degree. They are here for the next hour to answer those questions and share some of their experiences with you. All of them are volunteering their time today because of their love of SUNY Orange and their desire to give back to students. I hope you find value in their advice and take something away from the conversation. Thank you again for joining us, coming here today on your common hour. And I'm going to turn it over to alumnus and professor, Dr. G, who's going to be moderating the discussion today. And we are going to have some time to see some questions from you guys. So if you have any questions, we'll kind of take it right here, and at the end, we'll ask for some questions.
I'll take my mask off once you can actually see my face. I'm always in mask. Oh my God. As Jeffrey said, I am a graduate of this institution, class of '87. So we did not have the program today. Obviously, it was a growth period that there's only a year. I heard some of the conversation that started. So Alfred is the only panelist up here that did not sit in one of my classes, but she was the lucky one to stay in.
I didn't say that.
The others, Erin, Jason, and Cameron, they all were in my class. And each one of you take over if you kind of say when you graduated so they can start to get a time frame. Because Jason would be after me, after 87, and I think the newest is Erin. So basically, what we really want to provide you guys is an understanding of what you're getting here, as well as get some opportunity to talk to some of our graduates to know where they went, what struggles they had, and you're going to see that they're the same that you guys are seeing right now. So I'm going to start off with the introductions. Alfred.
Hi. So just name, please. My name is Alfred. I am originally from Bronx. I grew up there 16 years. Started to make my way up here. I did not graduate high school. I got my GED. I went to Dutch Community College. After that, I dropped out. I went to the military. Did that for 6 years. I became an engineer, and I just noticed engineering jobs suck. So I had to go back to school. This was all while I had my son here. So I had a son and my wife, and I decided to drop everything and go back to school. And I went to SUNY Orange, was my first stop. I transferred in 2019 to Marist, and that's where I graduated from as a magna cum laude. And I got my job at IBM.
My name is Erin Fanning. I graduated in 2020. I did the cybersecurity program on the outside program. I worked for a company called Alumni after graduation. I was doing specific compliance stuff for manufacturers here in State. And now I'm working for the trying to do this governance and compliance for honestly, everything that was that.
Jason Flores, I attended between 2006 and 2008 before transferring to Mount St. Mary to finish a 4-year degree. I have worked at a bunch of companies, but where I really started my career was a small one called Advanced Coding Technology, which was later purchased by Rapidly, which was later purchased by Raycon Technologies. So now I kind of just stumbled my way through worked out at Raycon Technologies. Yeah,
I'm Cameron Tidd. I graduated SUNY in 2010. I double majored in computer science and networking. And I transferred to Marist College and got a computer science degree there in 2012. And then I got a master's in computer science from Georgia Tech online in 2017. And I've had a professional career in software development for over 10 years. Started at IBM, microelectronics, chips, wafers, testing them, making sure they worked, bringing on the tool sets for that. And then I switched to a company called Cybex. They're based in Edinburgh, Scotland, but they had a satellite office in the region, the Poughkeepsie. And I got to go to Edinburgh for a week. Pretty cool. It's beautiful. Are you there? Talk about that. They do utility company field worker solutions, alignment, working on the electric wires, gas wires and stuff. And then I moved on from there to a company called Technically Creative in Windsor. They do regulatory compliance solutions for financial firms, a lot of analytics, a lot of data, migrations of systems. We have a product, PCO site controls, that I'm the lead on. I'm a senior software engineer there. I hire people, I basically run the dev team there. And a lot of fun there. And we're actually sponsoring a hackathon at Marist, which later in the month. So I'll be busy with that week now.
Let's open it up to you. What questions do you guys have?
They're required to get that degree, or was it easy finding a job that way?
So I started out interning at my first job, which was at Tech. And once I graduated, I got the position. I'd say it's very possible. A lot of people think that it's hard and you will get denied right away on some applications. Like you're fine if you don't have a bachelor's degree. But if you get your associates and have a pretty, are you outside or cyber or like what the right?
Networking.
Networking, yeah, you get the certificates and you have your associates, and you put your application, you will absolutely get it.
Yeah, I'm looking to fill some positions right now, and I would say quite a few of them don't have degrees, but they have a lot of certifications to back up their skill set and work experience to reflect that.
Yeah, for networking and IT certifications, get your foot in the door. If you're looking at development, it's a little harder if you don't have a bachelor's. You have to have a good portfolio, like on GitHub, for instance, where all your code's there and you can make a blog. But the path I took was a bachelor's and an internship. Like I had a co-op at IBM, and that's what kickstarted my career. So get that internship.
Internships are really crucial. I don't even have certifications yet. I work in the working system. You have to have 2 years of in-field experience for that. But if you can, the biggest thing ever is networking. Like emailing them, saying that you're looking for work, looking for the opportunity. And once we do that way, it's like.
Yeah, I would agree too. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that helped me with my career. Because when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I was doing 2 internships while in the school. And so like, I was able to put 1 internship into a part-time per diem position, and then do other internships on top of that, just stacking that work experience so that, when I did graduate, I felt pretty comfortable with moving into a new environment, learning with work, right, and making myself useful, right, providing value. I think that's the biggest thing you're doing.
Make friends with the professor who handles the career opportunities. Byron.
And for example, at my internship, I got 2 other of my friends at Orange internships at that job too. And they both got jobs right after that. And I was like, doing really well, making good money. One only has an associate's, one is going for a bachelor's. Almost done. So it's really about who you know, who you talk to. Yeah.
The one thing I'm gonna add to that is, you get a job, some of these companies are gonna offer continuing education, take advantage of it. Even if you only take 1 class a semester, it's a class. And before you know it, you're gonna get a degree. Most of you have already mentioned. The only degree I went full time was my degree here at Orange. All of my other degrees were part time, and many of them were paid for by who I was working for at the time. So that's also an opportunity. Don't stop your education. Always be inquisitive. We were talking about that earlier. Is one thing in this field, you have to be inquisitive. You have to learn.
Yeah, a lot of companies, when they're discussing your compensation package, right, they're not always talking about like how much they're gonna pay you per year, right? You gotta look outside of that too and see what educational benefits they provide. Because every year you don't take advantage of that, that's money on the table. Like, some companies offer $15,000 a year in paying for your education, right? So that's $15,000 a year for losing.
And that's a great point, because that's money on the table and you're just not taking advantage of it. Why not? It's there. That's a perk. Take advantage of it. You know what they are. Sometimes you have to put in like a development plan of what education you like to do, but you know what? It's worth it. Yeah, I know one company I work for, if you get an A, 100% reimbursement, B, 90% reimbursement, C, 70%, so, and I thought that was fair. Because that also gave the incentive of get that A.
Yeah.
Because I was always good on their part.
And when you're doing that too, it adds to your, I guess you could say your negotiation, right? So again, if you're doing a program at if your company's paying for your education, right? And you feel like they're not coming through, or there's a better opportunity, right? Don't be afraid to make that switch and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna owe this company so much money, right? That's what they kind of want you to do, is stuck with them. But really what you can do is then just go to your next employer, say, hey, like, I have this great education package. Can you match that, right? And can you help me offset the cost of what it's gonna be for me to move from one company to another? And for a lot of companies, that's just part of business.
I've used that benefit in my career. Master's degree.
Yeah, I got my MBA through Pratt Whitney, and they paid for it 100%.
And then you can use that to get raised. So now you have an MBA.
Yeah. I don't think you're.
Yes, I did. 3 months later. They said it was a miracle I got in.
Yeah.
I got it.
I mean, and you mentioned raise, like, just to talk about compensation real quick. Don't be afraid to move around a little bit, right? Because for me personally, every time I left and I actually came back to the same company, I must have done it 3 or 4 times. Left to come back, left to come back. Sometimes it was even to go to another company, like, I just meant travel. Like, I had enough of this, I need a reset, I'll see you guys in 6 months, I quit, right? And they're like, okay.
We'll just go.
Went all over. I lived in a van, just traveled around the country and just applied it. So like part of that is knowing your worth, right? Like, I spent a lot of time in that company adding value job saw how much automation was important. They're like, okay, we need you to do that in other places, right? And so then I was able to leave, come back, and every time I've done that, it was a 20% pay increase each time, right? Like, that's a cheat code you can get.
She's got a copy.
Or even, like, I had my first boss, if, asked for a raise and he was hesitant about it, I would go get an offer and say, hey, they're offering me this, so you can match your money. Essentially. And he gave me a raise every time.
Yeah, don't wait for them to be like, oh, well, there's this thing that's gonna open up.
You can get it
in a couple
elsewhere,
months.
and you can prove it. So definitely, like, be confident of your worth and make sure that people are compensated.
If you're not getting raises every year, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, getting judged, honestly.
I'm getting raises, if that raise is not offsetting inflation,
That too.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, my boss one time, and they're like, Jason, we're giving you a 4% raise, so that's a merit increase, and I didn't say anything, I just fired the phone. He's like, okay, so Jason, I know what you're thinking, but you got 20% of the available merit increase pool for our group. I still didn't say anything. And he's like, all right, like, I know you're not happy, and I'm like, I'm not, man, we need to make a change, and that change with me actually was moving on to the current position I have now, but, you know, you really have to keep thinking that way, like, you know, it's not about money, but it's about money.
I mean, don't get pressed housing.
But more often than not, you'll find out that companies are not gonna just offer you more than they have to. Getting back to, you kind of have to make yourself a value.
The biggest recommendation to you is the interviews. The first thing they're gonna do is ask you how much you want, which is a trap, because they have a budget to spend on a position. So the second you say something, it cements you to what's not your budget. So a lot of the times, it's better to be like, oh, well, I'd be more interested in hearing more about the position, or to say how much I think accurately represents the position. That's how we're made, but they be careful with saying how much you think you deserve.
I asked them what they think the range is for the position,
Exactly.
but I don't know.
And, you know, you mentioned interviews, right? Like, it's important to do as many interviews as you can, right?
They're fun.
Like, yeah, that's all this training material for you to jump in, get comfortable being told the questions, right? You just do it right back. You learn the company, right? Feel like it's a good fit, and if it's not, you just say no. Or even if you didn't want the job, you can say no. And just that empowerment of saying no is really, really strong. Like being able to walk away from an opportunity, right, gives you so much more flexibility in negotiations. Because then you can just ask them what the range is, if they want to be a can of button, I give it to you. Just throw a high range out there. Be like, oh, for this type of work, I'm thinking around 150. Be like, well, Jason, like our budget was more like around like 90. I'm like, well, okay, then I don't think it's a good fit. Then if we can offset between 90 and 150, right?
Or you let them give you 90, because originally you were gonna say 70, and then you're happy.
Well, yeah, but I would even still keep negotiating and be like, okay, well, like, we're pretty far apart from our numbers, right? So then how about we talk about what additional compensation is gonna be, whatever perks are gonna be to offset that, right, and get closer.
Because you're interviewing them too, so make sure it's a good fit, make sure work-life balance is what you want, make sure location is what you want. Remote is very popular now. Work from home, 100% work from home is very desirable right now. So now's a wonderful time to be a developer, scooped up like that, and you'll probably be working 100%. I'm not, I'm in a hybrid model, but you know, the world's your oyster right now.
Can you guys describe your working model, working colleagues Sure, I'll go first. So my work environment is pretty cool. I don't dress like this. I just go in with a hoodie, jeans, sneakers, and it's just pretty chill, relax. I'm a lab rat, so I don't really meet face to face with executives or customers, and if you're not meeting face to face with them, you dress however you want, just no cool jeans. And the people that I work with, I mean, the one that I work with now, Jack, he was a Marist alumni, and then I got my friend a job. He's also a Marist alumni. So it's just like 3 Marist students hanging out, having fun, learning stuff. just like doing that in college. So my learning environment is pretty cool, really relaxed. We're always bouncing ideas off each other, and just impact on the stuff that I said before, taking advantage of the education that they're going to give you. IBM gives me free Udemy courses all over. Anything I want to learn. If I want to learn Japanese, I got it. If I want to learn how to make banging sounding, Udemy's got it. So what we're doing right now is actually learning Ansible. So we could automate all of our daily tasks. Because what we're starting to notice is that we're doing the same task over and over again. And you notice you're doing something over and over again, that's an opportunity for automation. So my friend John brought that up, and he was like, hey, learn Ansible. And then I'm like, okay, well, learn Ansible. And now we got this whole, like, before when they were saying like this little cog in the wheel, now we're becoming a bigger cog in the wheel, where we, Jack, and John, and getting rid of one of us will pretty much disrupt that cog. So we're trying to make our work by taking advantage of education.
I had a very different experience. So I work face-to-face with clients, have progressed professionally. Have a wide range of coworkers age-wise. So I've had to deal with, the sexism of both ways. I've had to deal with ageism to a degree because I'm young in a position where I was kind of the face of something. It can be a struggle for sure, and I think that's something that's important to say because especially for your first job, in cyber and whatnot, there are a lot of people that gate you budget-wise, depending on if you're working for a small company, that can be a big issue, and you have to work with what they have, and that's that. And it's really hard to say much because we don't necessarily have a lot of power, especially. But it's really important to learn how to deal with those things because they're gonna happen, unfortunately, probably no matter where you work, to a degree. And working with somebody that causes that kind of tension is just like a very important thing. But I work now, that was all in person. I work now in a remote situation, which is a lot better so far. The only thing about remote work I would say is you have to really be able to separate and have that work-life balance. No one does not have a separate space to do it. And yeah, I think but it can be tough, but it can also be really great because we've given a lot of responsibility to other positions and been able to grow.
So, maybe, so many things I want to touch on. So as far as work dress, I had a very diverse work experience, but for some reason, all of it has allowed me to be stress and casual. Most of the time, I would just wear this and work. I've been a tech, I've been the director of IT. It's always been the same for me. So that's really nice. As far as working with others. So I definitely work in silos where I just have my environment. I was getting my marching orders, right? I did whatever. And then as my experience increased, right? For me personally, it's very important for me to learn the business, right? Learn what finance does, learn what the operations team does. So I work in manufacturing. That's like my whole career. Just 10 years in manufacturing. I've done aerospace manufacturing. I've done food manufacturing, where I work for a company called Popcorners, and they make those chips. So I was on popcorn every day. So, as I grew in my experience and as I learned about how businesses ran, right, that increased my interaction with other work groups. And you deal with a lot of different personalities, right? And I would say if you had a bad experience with any particular group, right, just try to think too, like where they're coming from, right? Sometimes we're understaffed and orders are coming in, they're getting piled high. People are getting mad at you because we're not pulling in money, right? And so when you ask to start poking around the department, there might be defensive, right? That makes sense, right? So you just take that for what it is, don't try to take it personally, and just look at it objectively, and try to identify where you can make those improvements, right? And so then my career trajectory has taken me out of the technical arena. I haven't scripted in a year or so now. Now I'm a professional phone call or email. So one at home, I roll out of bed, in my pajamas, I log into my computer. And
That's for my last email.
And yeah, and you know, it's.
The more meetings you have, the more important.
I think they call it CIO.
Now I'm just herding cats, right? And it's like, in my environment, it's a lot of acquiring new entities, right? And everyone is doing something different. And now that I'm in a corporate position, my job is to identify the correct strategy of aligning all those groups and pulling in those different business units so that we move in the same direction, right? Not necessarily dictating what they need to do, understanding what they need to do, and align that with the rest of the organization, try to figure out, okay, this is what can change. We'll have to make accommodations, but this is what you can change, right? And you're going to need to along with everyone else. And so I always have to be very cognizant of who I'm talking to. And it's because sometimes it's internal. Sometimes I'm dealing with our vendors, right? Who manage our infrastructure. And I have to be like, so now that you don't want this contract anymore, we have to talk about a transition to the new contract, right? Those aren't comfortable conversations. Right? But if you just try to learn to do it tactfully, professionally, just always try to put yourself in the perspective of what if I was receiving the news I'm about to give? What questions would I be asking? Right? What about that personality? What about that person that I do know that I figured they're gonna ask? If you're talking to someone who's mentioned that, man, they're gonna get every nitty-gritty detail. And it's worse if they're an engineer, that's in a powerful position, like a general manager of a facility, right? Because they're gonna ask you all these questions, and if you say, I don't know, they're like, freaking IT. Right? You never know what's going on, right? So like you always have to come correct, right? And just put yourself in that position where they can freaking ask me, right? And then have a backup plan, a contingency plan of, if I don't know a certain area, who can I say, yeah, I exactly know what you're talking about, and I'm working with this person with information.
And just to piggyback off of that, the most important thing, I think, is more important than your knowledge base going into the job is your soft skills. And being able to make connections, be that person that doesn't make waves or like cause issues, you can network, you can talk to people, you can be charismatic, you make people listen, you can work in a team. That is so important to companies right now because they lack it immensely. And that's how you're gonna elevate in positions as well. The more you are better at just doing that social stuff, the better it's gonna be long term for you to make more money and all that stuff. They have hundreds of, people who code, people who are networking that like to wear hoodies with their hood up and go on the computer and not talk. And being able to talk to stakeholders in a language that isn't techy is also massively important because nobody knows anything out of our mouths. We're talking like people speak to each other probably.
Yeah.
I mean, we were before, and Jen was like, it sounds like a different language. So it's really important to be able to talk to people without making them feel stupid because then it can flip back.
No one will ever understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even like right now, like I came out of the operational arena, right? And now I'm in asset management in IT. It feels like a whole world. It feels like a totally different language. It's the funniest thing. But
Communicating with people who aren't familiar with what you do, and maybe they're in control of the budget. You have to justify to them what you need to do. You can't just say, well, this would, make my life easier coding. Well, that's not good enough.
No, it needs to be an improvement for the company
Well,
and you have to prove that like dollar sign wise.
Dollar sign,
Where's he saving us?
or if we save time and save money, it's all about the money. And to touch on the original question, for a second, I've had business casual in most of my companies. I had to deal with clients previously at this company. I don't deal with them. We have the support team for that. I kind of like that because we focus on development. I've had to deal with clients. I've also had customer support too. And I kind of like being in the nitty gritty with the moment, but I had to kind of wear a lot of hats. support, background development, a little IT too. And the hierarchies, like at the big companies, you have layers of management, like I was like seven or eight down. Like it's hard to cut through the bureaucracy. It's hard to get anything done, it's hard to steer the ship. But in my current company, it's pretty much a flat hierarchy. You have CEO, CTO, and all the officers. Well, kind of level, like I kind of lead the dev team, but I report to the CTO and all the technical people report to the CTO. I kind of like that in a way, because you get the flexibility, there's no silos, we all are in it together, we're helping each other. He's got a problem, she's got a problem, we dig in, we just get it done, and that's a good benefit to that. I do want to touch on a point with remote work. While it is good, it's sometimes hard to be seen if you're all remote, which is what I've seen in my career. It's hard to make those connections, to get those opportunities. They don't know you
Unless you're actively seeking them out.
unless you're actively seeking them out. So people will only talk to you if they need something. Not just be like, oh, hey, Cameron, how's it going? How do I get? It's just gonna be transactional, so you have to seek out those opportunities. Seek out a mentor, where you can start in person. I recommend if you're starting your career, do it in person. You can form those mentorship connections naturally. They can show you the ropes. There's so much that, they can only show you online, like after meetings, there's always a discussion. If you're remote, you're not gonna hear that discussion. There's things you're gonna miss. So while the flexibility is great, you have to kind of keep that in mind. The early career, I recommend. Late career, I think remote gets better because you're more sure of yourself. You kind of know what you're doing. You never absolutely know what you're doing. Always learning. Always learning. Pick a different field.
Yeah.
Like I was doing things last week I didn't know the week before. I was writing an Outlook add-in to supervise emails and reject sending them and answer. Constant learning and keep all that in mind.
I think it brings up a good point about like small versus large businesses. I think a lot of those outside people you go to school really want to work for Bloomberg, Google, Microsoft, whatever it may be, make a lot of money, do really well. Like nobody knows who you are, they don't care about your mental health, and it's very high burnout rate for jobs like that. So really think about what you want in a job, and where you see yourself in the future. I personally like smaller companies because they make those connections we talked about before. Everybody's trying to move, like work towards a bigger picture, help each other out. I feel more fulfilled generally in a smaller company.
I think it's actually pretty good when it comes to that. Very family oriented, so like stuff like this, my son is all home. Oh yeah, sure, go. Great. I can work from home. So it depends what company you're looking at. Like, you always have to jump in and shit, right? Just make sure how money jump in. Maris does like, oh, you're alumni here at IBM, I'm not sure if all the Maris people actually at IBM. I don't know if OCC does that, but if you have something like that, we just check, hey, how's life working? Or maybe you just want to reach out to someone stranger, shoot them like and finish what we talked about. What's it like working at IBM? How's the family work? Whatever is important to you, I suggest you find that information before you dedicate yourself to a job that you're going to hate.
And interviews are two-sided. So things that are important to you, when you're getting interviewed, you ask those questions to them too. They don't interview with.
Yeah, I think like we're kind of touching on just understanding what your needs are, right? Like if you're not there to serve the company necessarily, right? You're there to add value, but it goes both ways, right? The company adds value to you by
Stop playing video games.
Yes, I help.
I do get paid to play video games, which is Smash tournaments.
So, just kind of think about it like that. I know when you're getting your first job and you're negotiating, you're so afraid to lose a good opportunity, right? So I think just getting used to interviewing and saying no and actually having multiple opportunities in front of you.
And I think we've been talking about it from a very positive standpoint of the fact that, yeah, you're gonna have this negotiating power and offers, but you're gonna face a lot of no's. Like, for a 3 yes you have, you've got 10 no's. And for some people, like rejection might be hard. Get over it. You're gonna get a lot of no's, and don't be afraid to ask questions, especially when you start a new job too. They prefer to ask questions that flounder and suffer, and then they see it a month in and have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But the big thing is, don't let the no's get you down. You're gonna get a yes eventually. And your first job, you might not love it, it might not have great benefits, but do it for years, get the experience, and then go get another one.
Just do the interviews now, right?
Just do the interviews.
Like, do the interviews while you're in college, right? The risk is relatively low, right? You're still finishing school, right? So, there's not much on the line, because after you graduate, you're like, all right, now high school, so like, back people for different.
I have a question. Is there any adult students here? Adult students? Adult students? Great. I was an adult student pretty much most of my career in college, but I sort of get you guys. You guys need money. You guys have responsibilities at home. I mean, we have wives, children. My advice to you is just keep working, keep hustling, put all that stress aside. It's gonna work out if you just keep doing what you do. I remember me, my son, my wife, we struggled a bit trying to pay the bills, right? We didn't live with nobody, we didn't really have family to live with. So I know that's a lot of stress on you guys right now. Just know it gets better, all right? Just keep doing what you're doing. I just want to say that.
One thing I want to throw in, I just want to, I want to follow up on what pretty much all the mentioned, but Aaron also mentioned about doing the research. When it comes time for you to do an interview with a company, do the research of that company, know that company, understand what that company does, because one pitfall question, they might ask you, so what do you think we do here? And if you don't have an understanding of what that company does, they don't take you seriously because you didn't do your work. Always prep your work. I mean, how many of you did not do your research before you did your interview?
I did, but then I would also say some companies on purpose try to be nebulous. They try to be very vague with their internet code.
Some people, they use recruiters that don't tell you what the company is.
Yeah.
What they.
So,
But for the most part, it's a big thing, and the bigger part of it is it shows to them that you're interested, and people love that. Like, when they're interviewing you, the fact that you're like, oh, I really like that you do this, and if they don't bring it up, if you bring something up, that shows that interest, it shows that you're serious. You're not just, tossing out lines and hoping somebody bites. You're like interested in them as a company.
Yeah, so thinking about your first job out of school, that very first job, how much was expected of you? Now, we go through these years of our studies and 100% retention is obviously not expected. It's more about tools to find the answers later on. So what was your impression of how much they expected you to know out of school? With their training programs and all, like how did you feel getting thrown into this new world, like a working world, with what you learned from school? Did you feel prepared? Did you feel like you had to, you on your own hours, trying to, catch up? What was the general feeling? So I'll start. So through my time here, my friend always told me better than explain that. So I was like, yeah, we get to it. Yeah, whatever. My first job at IBM, and to mention, I got rejected from IBM, maybe like once or twice, but I didn't take no for an answer. There's obviously different teams. Someone's gonna say yes to me, darn it. So finally, I got that job, and what was it? Linux. It was hardware. It was deployment. It was everything that I did escaping my whole college career, because Dr. G was being selfish, she had to go get his doctor. But to come back to that question, I had to do a lot of catching up on my own. So they offered that issue them, as I was saying earlier, and it was just me and you, Ben, we were like best friends, and I was learning minutes in 5 days. Beginner to pro master in 2 weeks. Like I was taking all those courses because I needed to get up to speed. And once I got up to speed, I can't satisfy my mentor. I found my mentor, his name is Wesley Jones, really nice guy, and he taught me everything from deploying to like post install, getting it up, and you adapt, right? And as an adult student, you gotta adapt to the changes. You know, how you get this done, how you do this. You don't know how you're gonna do it in the moment, but somehow you adapt and you figure it out, and now you're skating on by, and people behind you are like, how do you do that? How does it go to school with a kid? How do you do that? You adapt. So don't worry about what should I be learning now for this job, blah, blah, blah. I would say find your hobby, find what you like, and go with it, and then try to look for jobs that pertain to your hobby. C++, look for jobs that pertain to your hobby.
I had two very different experiences. My first job is why I looked for what I looked for my second job, but my first job there was no training. I was expected to figure it out. Ton of responsibility. Kind of created the program for what it was today. I did a lot of work. It was fun to be able to do that, but it was also exhausting to have to do that. And some jobs are going to do that too. But the job I have now, and I specifically was looking for this because I didn't get that in my first job. I didn't have that coach. I get a coach. Everybody gets a coach. Full access to LinkedIn Learning. Our CTO reports videos, educational training videos on top of all the course training. It's like 8-hour videos going over standards and controls and all that stuff. They pay, I think, a minimum of $2,000 a year for education stuff. And there's an orientation, which I never had, like an entire week of training, which is very cool. So it's important to think about. Sometimes you get a job, you're like, I just need this job, it doesn't really matter. And you might get thrown into something like that. You're like, okay, cool to be your best friend. You just gotta really figure it out quick. And that's intimidating, but you figure it out. It happens, it works out, everything's okay. But it's, if you can find a place that has that structure, I think it's really important.
Yeah, for me, it was just very much send it every time. Like we want a virtual environment. Okay, like who's gonna help us? Like, you're gonna do it. Okay, and so it was just late nights, doing research, right? Pretending my name is on the building, right? What would I want this to look like, right? And I would just do everything from there. And basically, everything that I've done in my career has been exactly that. Like, oh, we need a SQL database. Or no, we want to do a SharePoint site. So now I need to figure out how to build a SharePoint farm. And then, oh, well, we should probably break it out and have a backend database somewhere. So now I'm going to build a SQL server, right? All these things just kept piling on each other. And I just kept researching. And whenever I had a problem, I wouldn't just say, I have a problem, right? I would go to my boss and say, I have a problem. I think this is the solution. Like, what do you want to do? And my boss pretty much every time was just like, I hired you to be the expert, so just do whatever. It's like, okay. So I never really had, I don't think I've ever really had a proper mentor to be like, to go into the technical problem, and be like, what do I do? For me, my mentors have just been more about like life experience. So I enjoy being outdoors, a rock climber. And so like I get to hang out with a bunch of different people in rock climbing, doctors, engineers, IT executives, a whole bunch of people, right? And so through that, I learned how to move in my career, right? One of my best friends is from South Africa. When I first met him, it's like, oh, what do you do? He's like, I'm a software developer for like fintech. Like, that's pretty neat. He's like, yeah, it's all right. He's like, I just came here to America. They offered me 3 weeks vacation. I was like, is that not good? He's like, well, I asked for 8. Okay. So, but like, that's just how it goes. You gotta like spend time there, build it up. He's like, what's it? I really don't. He's like, I'm just gonna work. And then after maybe a year, I'll probably split. What would you do after that? He's like, oh, I would go travel around the United States. He's like, I want to see this country. And then what do you do after that? He looked at me like I was an idiot. He's like, I get another job, Jason. I was like, no way. So I'm like, okay. So I kind of just took that, right? And I just tested it at my job. Like, hey, listen, I set up all this infrastructure. We getting burnt out. I'm gonna take like a month off. And they're like, well, Jason, you're gonna have to. How do you see the crux? Right? You see the problem here. And they're like, no, like, you can take 2 weeks. Well, we'll give you 2 weeks, but that's it. I'm like, all right. Can I just take 2 additional weeks unpaid? And they're like, yeah, sure, I guess. If you think you can afford it, I'm like, I think I can do it. I said, I took a month, I went to Thailand. I had a blast, and I came back, and it's like, okay, this works, right? And then I just kept escalating. Like, okay, like, we did through a whole bunch of organizational changes. I kind of got screwed up in my career, and I was like, I'm just gonna quit. I know there's no path forward here, so it was nice working with you guys. And I'm gonna travel, and they're like, don't go too far. Right? So then 6 months later, they're like, hey, we have an engineering position for you. And I'm like, I'm not an engineer. And they're like, we know, but that's the headcount we can get you under. So just be an engineer, right? And we'll figure it out from there. Okay, fine. Right? And I just kept repeating the process. So like a lot of my mentors just really helped me navigate my career, like soft skills, right? And then for me, it was really on me to develop the learning patterns, which I think college is really for, right? It's not to memorize every single thing and technique and all that stuff, right? It's develop patterns of learning so that you can quickly acquire knowledge and apply it immediately, right? I'm doing it right now. Like I mentioned before, I was in the operational space, right? So everything in the data center with me, everything happened on the shop floor with me. And now in this space is asset management. I thought asset management and IT were kind of the same thing, and they're not. It's totally different perspectives. It's a different language. Every time I go into a meeting, I feel like it's learning a new language. I don't even know what's happening most of the time. Okay, yes, okay. I own international data centers. Yeah, sure. I own all mobile devices internationally. Okay. I own both domestic data centers. Sure. And I'm just like,
They did that to me at IBM too, right? You're gonna own these assets that are in a remote location you've never been to.
Yeah.
Good luck.
yeah, and so, but it's like, all right, challenge accepted. We can learn how to operate in this space. Let's do it. I think we're doing it right.
That's kind of rough, like what I heard is that nobody knows.
That's such a good point.
Like literally, even people that have been working there for a long time, like nobody really knows what's going on. So just do the best you can.
We all
And that
technically
usually
have
ends up
to.
being impressive. Like if you're putting effort in and you're asking for help communicate, which is very important, then you're gonna be okay.
That's the right question. Excellent.
So being a self-starter is important too. You have to have that in that I want to learn. So otherwise you're just gonna be there and
For me, with my co-op, I was embedded with a bunch of part engineers. They didn't know software engineering at all. This is my first professional experience, straight out of the gate. And while college gives you a great foundation, it's impossible for it to teach everything you need to know. Like I said, I'm still learning. So I had to learn how to write a Java enterprise application completely by myself, basically. And I look at that code right now, like, oh, what was I thinking? What was that? But I had to go, I had to figure it out, it's a process. So like, you do the first things, and you incorporate it, and it worked technically. I presented it. They're like, okay, it gets the part information. Way to go, but all those principles about good design, good engineering, you got to run into the issues yourself. Like you can try to study as much as you can, but the only way to get good at your craft is to actually practice it and to actually solve those problems. And then the things start clicking. Oh, that's why when I'm doing error handling, I should throw that exception here. And I shouldn't just catch it all the time and print the console. There's a reason exception handling exists. Because then support calls me and is like, no worky. And if you don't have any information to figure out what went wrong, how are you gonna fix it?
Spend 3 days trying to figure it out.
They spend days trying to figure it out. And then either you give up and say, whatever, I can't reproduce it, or ideally,
It's not like a teacher.
I've spent weekends just debugging, really getting into it, and late nights, but you get there, and yes.
Cameron, like, you know, I guess how important is it to the business for you to produce the original work, right? As opposed to just like finding a reference online.
That's a great question. So we like to use open source libraries as much as possible, but a lot of new people like to reinvent the wheel because in school you're taught, oh, you gotta write this from scratch. You gotta do everything yourself. But then you get into the real world, it's like, okay, we need to parse this JSON. Like, okay, I guess we need to write a JSON parser. There's libraries for that. You're basically wasting your time and you're not gonna get it to cover all the cases that it needs to cover without spending a lot of time and effort on it. And that's not the business problem you're trying to solve. So use libraries that are well supported, that have community support and have favorable licenses. GPL, that. Don't use GPL because you have to give your source code back. If you're in a corporate company, they don't like giving their source code back. So always check the license. But build on that and, incorporate all that code and like, you can go out and look up stuff on Stack Overflow for certain things, to figure out how to do things. And I'm on Stack Overflow all the time. But do not just copy all sorts of code without attribution. That's copyright infringement. Get the company in big trouble. So if there's a license, make sure it's there. If there's a copyright statement, never get rid of it. Never take credit for anything you didn't write.
So document all the resources for you.
Yes. There needs to be a way that they can know. Because I'm not a lawyer, but you have to be aware of that. You don't want to get the company in trouble unnecessarily. So you gotta kind of think, is this okay? Yeah. It's a great question. Build on top of what's there, but be careful and aware of the legal ramifications. And don't waste time trying to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's there. Just put it on the car and go.
Sorry about that,
Well, we have a few minutes, but,
but it's like,
yeah, go right ahead.
Cameron, what you were just saying about, here we say, no, you gotta write code, you have to write it from scratch. And, I think at this point in time, you realize we forced you to write things from scratch, knowing you were not really going to be doing that out in the field, because there was a madness who are raising this. Being out in the field, what did you wish you paid more attention to at this college? And do you now see why I did go Google it? Did you guys? I'm sure they do that too. And you know that, but you, now hindsight, talk about what you feel you paid more attention to.
I wish I paid more attention to data structures and algorithms for us. Because all the interviews in development are all white swap and top companies. They pose you an algorithmic challenge, like sort this binary tree and traverse it using in order to traverse it, go. And you have to figure out, you have to know how to do that on the spot, you have the right to go to the whiteboard. If you don't know how to do that, sorry, rejected. Doesn't matter if you can actually do the job that they're hiring you for, they want you to have that baseline. So really having that strength and data structure algorithms is crucial to get to the big companies. Not all companies are gonna go that way, but there's sites like Caddis, LeetCode, HackerRank, you could practice those sorts of questions. And they're exactly the same questions that are in programming contests, as well as at SUNY Orange. I competed in programming contests with the Math Computing Club, which was a wonderful club. We got to go to Franklin Institute. It was wonderful. I recommend it. But we do the programming contests and we host them too here. So if you're going to be a developer, do those. Because they're going to ask you those questions. That's what I wish I paid a little more attention to. And so you have to spend like a couple months training on these algorithms, data structures, just to interview for a job. So prepping to interview for devs is a job in itself. For IT, it's a little easier because it's like, well, I think, you know, what are you capable of? What problems have you encountered? What's your experience? Which I've had interviews like that. And but in the dev world, they go beyond that a little bit a lot. So that's why you're shocked.
Yeah, I was a different person when I was studying. I went through a lot of personal growth. So I wish I wasn't such a donut while I was here. I wish I just paid more attention to other people's study habits, right? Like how people are farming. I didn't do that. I didn't do any of that. And so I take up a lot of time trying to relearn that. And then for technical, I wish I could spend more attention to the network courses. I think I would have saved me a lot of headaches. If I did with that.
Probably, I mean, all of it would be great. It's easy to get good grades, it's another thing to like absorb information and actually learn from it. So I guess, like anytime a professor's like, this was important, if you don't learn it, then you learn the lesson later in life when you have to force yourself to learn it yourself. So, Linux is big, I use HTML and we were like, I use CSS, we were like, if you work for a small company, for a lot of hats, you're like the technical person. Like I've changed our website up, I've done everything. Anything that I've learned here, I've applied somehow in the job, pretty much, except for criminology, I'm not. But other than that, yeah, it's all pretty useful. But Linux. It's gonna get you,
Learn Linux, learn it now.
Yeah.
What I wish I would have done was, fortunately, I didn't have that, but I wish I started a GitHub profile. Anything I learned from school, I just uploaded it to my GitHub private repository, because professors will reach out to you and tell you to take that off. So building my profile early while I was in college, doing personal projects, developing stuff, even if it's just a simple video game that you put on the app store, or maybe just, hey, I want to build an automated math problem, quadratic formula, I don't know, anything that you could think of. I wish I would have explored earlier on these projects or built my portfolio and have a big listing. That way, when I went out to interview, I just had a whole bunch of stuff to talk about instead of waiting until the last second on YouTube, trying to build up my
Does anyone have 12 o'clock at Marvin? Okay. You guys take off. We're wrapping up now, right?
Yes. I just want to thank our alumni past. Yeah, I was gonna say that, so please, if you are students, stay connected regardless, if you have alumni relations, stay connected to your professors. I'm sure all of them will be willing to connect with you outside of this room, if you have any questions, on anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
My business cards.
And the networking portion, I really think it's important. Because sometimes it's just like someone will call me, Dr. G, we're looking for someone. You know what? I got someone. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But it's amazing how tight knit you are being part of. You have a network, you don't even know that.
Take advantage of it.
You want to hang out a little bit more, if not even class?
Yeah,
Oh, you did? Oh, so you just left? Oh, okay. It's a lot better.
It's a little scary.
Awesome. We'll get in touch. I'll get you in touch with Yeah, I heard you're getting a better building. We're just very excited. See you again.
I might come back for class.
Great, great.
Just hearing you and quit and go. That's what I'm doing right now.
It's all right, like, I don't know. This is my son, this is what I expect.
Well, you're gonna be careful with the classes. But, like, if it's something that class that they give you permission to go to. I mean, I guess I'm spending that a lot of checking them out. It gives me a good idea of what they know, style, or like
Yeah, I recommend.
All of them.
I want to know, at a certain point, in English, I think it's good to be an expert at a language. Like, really, when it's like that, well, you pick up, I picked up. So it took me about 3 years.
There you go.
So I did like, computer science classes for networking. I would have done cybersecurity, but it just debuted like the last semester.
I would say. Everyone went through it.
Code Academy might be a good start.
Yeah.
For free, like, I don't know, pay a lot of money. Just that. There might be tutorials on YouTube. I use O'Reilly Online Learning as a program. My career, but you have to pay. For that. But Udacity, Udemy.
Put it on the favorites and then go merge.
Udacity has a lot of free courses too.
Free is always one. But if you're just starting out, try it.
And YouTube is
Great.
find hard to reliable tutorials.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, like there's this site called, I don't know how you pronounce it, Bailung, BAELUNG. Comes up a lot in search. Like a web job information. You can spend like a couple hours.
Standing up and saying.
You don't need to spend all your time.
This is really great.
You could, but you get obsessed with your work. Don't bring yourself out.
Nice to see you, yeah, thanks.